Welcome to the show. Today we're diving deep into the 2010 Haiti earthquake.
Yeah, it's one of those events where everyone remembers where they were when they heard the news.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But we're going to go deeper than just, the headlines. We're really trying to unpack how this one event, tragic as it was, shows just how connected our world really is, like the butterfly effect.
And that's what I find so fascinating about this earthquake. It's not just a natural disaster, it's this story of history and geology and even global politics all colliding at once.
So where do we even start with something like that?
Well, we have to start on January 12, 2010. A 7.0 earthquake hits Haiti right near the capital, Port-au-Prince.
And that's the Enriquil Plantain Garden Fault System, right?
Exactly.
So for those of us who, aren't geologists, can you break that down? What does that even mean, this fault system?
Imagine this. Two massive pieces of the Earth's crust, the North American and Caribbean plates. They're not just sitting still, they're always pushing against each other. That pressure builds and builds, and when it finally releases... Exactly, and this fault system, that's like a giant crack where these plates meet, making this whole region really prone to earthquakes.
Okay, so Haiti's on shaky ground, literally. But this earthquake, it wasn't just about the geology, was it?
Right, exactly. It's like, imagine Haiti's already standing on, say, one leg, unstable. And that instability comes from decades of poverty, political turmoil, foreign intervention, all these factors weakening its foundation. Then the 2010 earthquake hits.
And it's just devastating.
Exactly. And what makes it even more tragic is that this wasn't the first time Haiti had experienced a major earthquake.
Right, there was that quake back in 1946.
Yeah, comparable in size to the 2010 one. It caused a lot of damage. But then things got quiet. For almost 65 years, Haiti experienced this period of relative calm, seismically speaking.
So a lot of people, maybe even a whole generation, grew up not really understanding how destructive an earthquake could be.
Precisely. And that's where this idea of the butterfly effect comes in, that quiet period. It led to this sense of complacency. Building codes weren't enforced as strictly, people weren't prepared for the ground to move like that again.
Wow. So something that happened or didn't happen decades ago has this huge impact on what happened in 2010. It makes you think, what other echoes of the past are shaping our present? It's like all these factors were already in place,
right?
And then this earthquake just hits.
Yeah, and it's 4:53 p.m. local time when that fault finally gives way.
Can you imagine? 30 seconds, the ground just violently shaking.
Buildings collapsing, people trapped.
The National Palace, gone. Just like that.
And you know what amplifies the destruction even more? It's that lack of preparedness we talked about.
Right, the building code, the infrastructure, it's like the perfect storm.
And as the dust settles and the world sees the devastation, this massive global response swings into action.
Everyone was glued to the news. Those images were just heartbreaking.
Absolutely, and rightfully so. This was a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions.
The UN was already in Haiti, right?
They were, yeah, because of the political situation. And after the earthquake, it's all hands on deck. NGOs from all over the world, aid workers, everyone trying to help.
Billions of dollars poured in, right?
Yeah.
I remember people wanting to do anything they could to help.
It was this huge outpouring of support, but large-scale relief efforts. They're complicated.
How so?
Well, imagine this. You have this sudden influx of aid, resources, people, but there's no infrastructure to support it.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
You have supplies piling up at the airport because there's no way to distribute them, aid groups working with different agendas, and sometimes that aid, it doesn't even reach the people who need it most.
But good intentions only go so far, right?
Exactly. And sometimes those good intentions can actually backfire.
What do you mean?
Well, take Haiti's clothing industry, for example. It was small, but it existed. Then came the influx of donated clothes, used clothes from all over the world.
Which at the time seemed like a good idea, right?
Of course, people need clothes. But the sheer volume of those donations, it flooded the market, made it nearly impossible for local businesses to compete.
So you have this system that's overwhelmed.
Exactly.
And then what happens in the long term? How does a country even begin to recover from something like this?
That's the real question, isn't it? And it's not just about rebuilding buildings, it's about rebuilding lives.
Right, because we're talking about a whole nation that's experienced this trauma.
Absolutely. And on top of the trauma, you have families that are displaced, communities that are scattered.
And the psychological impact, that could be just as devastating as the physical damage.
Right, and we can't forget about that. And sadly, a lot of the aid that was promised, those billions of dollars, it didn't always reach the people who needed it.
What do you mean?
Well, there were delays, mismanagement, even accusations of corruption. It's like the same problems that existed before the earthquake, they just got amplified afterward.
So it's this vicious cycle, almost.
It is, and it's another example of that butterfly effect at work. Remember we were talking about building codes?
Right, how they weren't always enforced.
Well, even after the 2010 earthquake, there were reports of new buildings going up without proper inspections, contractors cutting corners. It's a reminder that unless you address those root causes of vulnerability, they're just going to keep coming back to haunt you.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What are the lessons that we can learn from the 2010 Haiti earthquake, especially when it comes to preparing for and responding to disasters?
It's tough, but I think the biggest takeaway for me is the importance of preparedness. And I don't just mean having an emergency kit. I'm talking about investing in infrastructure, strengthening institutions, tackling those underlying issues that make a community vulnerable in the first place.
So it's about being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly. And when disaster does strike, we have to rethink how we approach aid. It's not enough to just throw money at the problem. We have to listen to local communities, respect their knowledge and experience.
It's about empowering them to rebuild in a way that works for them.
Right. The 2010 Haiti earthquake was a tragedy, there's no other way to put it, but it's also a story of incredible resilience, of communities coming together to support each other. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this deep dive, it's that our actions, even the small ones, they have ripple effects.
That butterfly effect again.
Yeah. We have a responsibility to learn from the past, to be more intentional in the present, to work towards a future where we are all a little bit more resilient.
Such an important message. It's a lot to think about, but it's so crucial that we do. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.